and hit this record button. Awesome. Put on do not disturb one more time. I wanted to keep it on just in case if anyone pulled up and couldn't hear anything. And I was like, let me not put on do not disturb yet, just in case. Alrighty. And I'm going to be off mute for a good little bit because this is about you. Cool. Awesome. So my first question for you is to just tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Where are you from, where you grew up, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I grew up an only child in Jacksonville, Florida. I was actually an only child and an only grandchild on my mother's side. I'm one of probably 30 grandchildren on my father's side, but I grew up primarily with my mother's family. And I tell everybody that I was just a well-loved child. I think when the person in your family who's closest in age to you turns 16, 4 months after you're born, it just makes for a very unique kind of family dynamic. And I don't use the word dynamic in a way to suggest dysfunction. We just did some really cool stuff. I was very, very close to my grandparents. I was very close to my godparents. I am still very close to my mom. And the funny thing to me now as an adult is when people visit my apartment, they're like, this is like a museum. Because I really am trying to sort of, when I moved into this place, I said to myself, I really want this to be kind of a space that is a reflection of all the people who helped to raise me. And so they were poets, and they were chefs, and they were teachers, and they were preachers. And I think the values that I got from them, the way that I look at the world because of them, it's all in an attempt to honor what I was given as a child, because I was immeasurably blessed as a child. I went to public schools all 12 years, but the running joke in the family was that I was at public-private schools. So I went to public schools that kind of functioned and educated the students like the private schools in our city. The most interesting thing for me, growing up at the time that I did, I grew up in, pretty much the 80s. So the school district, like a lot of school districts in the country, had a federal order to desegregate. And I mean, it's the 80s. It's how many years after Brown v. Board? A long time after Brown, decades after Brown v. Board. But I have a very distinct memory. And I remember having this conversation with my mom in recent years, where in second grade, I started each school day raising my hand to indicate that I was a Black girl. Yeah. So they would ask all the Black girls in the class to raise their hand, all the white girls in the class to raise their hand, all the white boys in the class, all the Black girls, all the Black boys in the class. And I had this conversation when I was living in the Middle East a few years ago with a friend of mine who grew up in South Africa. Mm-hmm. And she was like, that sounds like apartheid. What was happening? And the way that I explained it to her is they were doing such an abysmal job in our school district of satisfying the federal mandate that was something that they had to do. And I remember it. I mean, that would have been 1985? So yeah, we're halfway into the decade. Not that long ago. Longer ago for someone who was born in 2003, but not that long ago. And they couldn't get it right. I graduated from high school. They still hadn't gotten it right. I graduated from Aggie Scott. They still hadn't gotten it right. I graduated from Northwestern with my first master's degree. They still hadn't gotten it right. They didn't get it right until 2001. And at that point, I think at that point, something like 42, 43 of the schools in the district were still considered predominantly Black. And so that gives you some idea of how, race and culture and education all start to converge in a brain like mine. And so coming to a place like Agnes Scott, it was another entry point into some of these things for me.
Wow, you said quite a lot there. Quite a lot. In my head, I never really thought about like obviously I thought about the desegregation and things like that, but like it's crazy to think about 1985. Like that's when they actually started like doing it more, and it's like that's honestly really disappointing. And like I don't know, that blows my mind, because it's like in some ways, like even though like they're definitely getting better with it now, sometimes I feel like they still don't have it right. So
no, they don't. And we're seeing this kind of a reversal in recent months. And the funny thing for me is that was my experience. That was the experience of a lot of my friends growing up where I grew up. And then you have someone like my dear friend who I talked about last week, who was the second Black SGA president at Scott. She grew up in Atlanta. Totally different experience. All Black everything. We root for Black people all the time. We got Black mayors, we got Black city council, we got Black police chief, blah, 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 blah. All Black everything. And so it was just eye-opening to come to Scott and meet people who had experiences like hers. But I also had a roommate at one point that lived in a town where there were no Black people. Not a single one.
Were you the first, was Agnes Scott like the first Black people that she actually interacted with?
The first Black people that she interacted with consistently, yes.
Wow. And the fact that you were her roommate.
That was 1995.
Oh my God.
She's from, a place in northern Georgia near the Tennessee border. Mm-hmm. And I remember her very, very clearly saying to me, confiding one day, it's really hard for me. I mean, you got to figure, 1995, people are starting to use African American a little bit more at that point, which I thought was kind of weird and I never really adopted African American because I'm in school with people from Ghana. So, no, I'm going to just say Black because I'm Black and it feels more comfortable. But I remember having a conversation with this roommate, and she said to me, because of where she had grown up, she didn't know what was appropriate. I don't know if I should be saying colored. I don't know if I should be saying Negro. I said, you definitely don't want to say that last one. Don't say the last one.
Right.
Again, and this is 1995. How have you been able to sort of grow up in this bubble where you don't know that it is definitely not appropriate to say Negro when you're describing someone you're in school with? Colored? No, don't do that. Don't do that. I could see, someone at that time being confused about Black versus African American. Mm-hmm. I think it's something that, even comes up here in 2025. But 30 years ago? This is not, Selma 1904. Come on now.
I'm supposed to be quiet, but I couldn't help but laugh at that one because that's honestly very disappointing too. Even outside of this roommate, were there other interactions with professors and just the campus culture that ever made you feel your race played a part in, you feel?
So I was an English major. Mm-hmm. And there was a member of the English faculty at the time who had a reputation for giving Black students a hard time. And I was not a fan of this particular professor. I avoided this professor for most of the time that I was taking courses in the major. I took one class with her. I think she ended up giving me a C. But I just remember people saying that she had gotten a Black student kicked out of school by saying she plagiarized something. And she was also, I mean, I think I alluded a little bit last week to how there were members of the English faculty who were not thrilled with my project. I didn't go into detail about that, but I can now. So because I was doing a video project, because I was trying to do a documentary short, there was some discussion in the English department faculty, among the English department faculty, that I shouldn't be allowed to do that. This is the English department, they said. It needs to be writing something, they said. And Dr. Tolliver said, well, we teach a film class in this department. So yes, it actually makes sense that she's trying to do this. And, at the time, I think Chris Ames was the chair of the department, and he taught film class. And so he was like, she's in my class, so yeah, Willie's making a good point. And there was a little bit more of a turn in the tide among the English faculty at that point. But yeah, they were just like, she's an English major, she needs to write something. And so, Dr. Tolliver and I sat down. I don't even remember what I ended up writing, but I did end up writing something not as substantial as some of the other directed studies from the past, but I ended up writing something just to appease the members of the faculty that were not into it. But yeah, that one professor is the only person among the faculty that I remember having issues with. Yeah, I there were other members of the faculty that were just like curmudgeon-y. Dr. Bonaball comes to mind. I love Dr. Ball. Dr. Ball actually was probably one of the people to encourage me to take the path that I took professionally. This is not, this has nothing to do with problematic professors. Although I think if you were to talk to some other folks who were at Ag and Scott in the mid to late 90s, they had some issues with Dr. Ball. Yeah. It's just because he was a curmudgeon. I mean, people thought he was mean, but he was just kind of crotchety. I remember I only took it once, and it was for Shakespeare because that was his thing. And I took him for, I don't even remember what the class was. I think it was comedies. And first exam that we took, take the exam, he collects all the papers, comes back the next week, is giving out all the papers, and I don't get mine. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe mine is stuck to somebody's. And so I'm like asking folks, hey, is mine stuck to yours perhaps? The paper or the staples get attached? And they're like, Dr. Ball. Yeah. I didn't get my exam back. And he goes, what's your name? And I told him. And he said, oh, yeah, I need to see you after class. I think I was like a junior at this point. And again, there's this thread of someone getting kicked out of school for plagiarizing in the back of every Black person's mind, especially if you're in the English department. A lot of the Black women at that time who were majoring in English were English creative writing majors. I was not a creative writing major. I was strict literature. And so I was like, oh my God, does he think I copied off of somebody? Like, what is happening? So I go up to him after class, and I'm like, Dr. Ball, can we talk? And he goes, no, you need to come to office hours. And I'm like, what the hell? So it's good, I figure out when I can go and talk to him during office hours. He was like the only member of the faculty outside of the music department with an office in the basement of Gaines. And his office had no windows. It was the weirdest thing. So, I get down there on the day that we're supposed to meet. He's not there. So I'm like in the hallway waiting for him. And I don't know why I remember this, but Brigida Johnson, who was another Black woman in the class of 99, who was a music major, was down there in one of the practice rooms. And so she's, she plays like 900 instruments. So I don't even know which one of the instruments she's practicing on. But she comes out and she's like, what are you doing in here? And I was like, I'm meeting with Dr. Ball. And she's like, oh, good luck with that. He shows up. We go into his office, and I sit down, and he offered me, I don't know if it was like a sweet or something. I thought that was so weird. And I said, no, sir, I'm good. I'm just kind of here to talk about what's going on with this exam. And he goes, what do you want to do when you get out of here? Can you just tell me what's going on? He was like, I'm really curious. What do you want to do when you get out of here? I said, I guess I want to be a journalist. I want to be a writer. He's like, yeah. And then he starts to tell me about all these different students that he's taught over the years who've gone on to have writing and journalism careers. Okay, fine. Where's my exam? So he hands it to me and it has an A on it, which Bona Ball did not give A's. There were a couple, B plus Gus Cochran, and Bona Ball. They did not give A's. Like, it was unheard of. And so I'm like looking like, wait a minute, I got an A? I'm expecting to see you plagiarize and we need to have a conversation with the dean, and that's what I'm expecting to see. And I got an A. And he was like, you're a very good writer. You're a very strong writer. And I just want you to know that you can do whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to do, you can do that. There were Dr. Peggy Thompson, who was also on the English faculty, was really quite good about encouraging me in that way. Dr. Linda Hubert, who I like to, in my brain, she was probably one of the members of the faculty who was pushing back on the fact that I was trying to do a film. My literature studies took me down a path where I did a lot of American literature courses, and she was like the American literature guru. So I took a lot of classes with Dr. Hubert. And I remember taking a course with her one semester where she actually was trying to encourage me to enter a writing contest. So yeah, I mean, on the whole, the experiences with the faculty were good, with the exception of that one professor. I remember that the professor that I was not particularly fond of. At the time, I don't know if he still does, but in the English department, you would do like a senior seminar where you were all together over the course of the full senior year. And I remember this particular professor taught one of the lectures, and I got up and walked out.
Good.
I was like, she did, I don't even remember what it was. She asked a question, and we're kind of going around and responding, and she just made she's just kind of snarky with what I said, and I was like, yeah, I'm done. I don't have to put up with this. I'm nearly out of here anyway. It was the spring semester. I remember that. And I collected my belongings, and I walked out, and there was like this collective in the class. When I walked out, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this. I don't have to. Like, we've gone to enough classes at this point where, okay, so, and I had a really good relationship with Dr. Thompson. We were in touch until, she retired. And so I knew that if it got back to her, she was just going to be like, okay, what did she say? And then what did you say? Okay, cool. I just knew that it was going to be okay. Yeah. And so, I think that is reflective of feeling like I had champions. I thought it was a beautiful thing that this Black male professor who came along shortly after I arrived on campus as a student was willing to be, the ride or die faculty advisor. But I also love that, Peggy Thompson, this woman with Midwestern origins, who grew up in probably one of the whitest families one could expect to grow up in, was also equally willing to ride or die.
Aw, I love to hear that, honestly. And I'm like, it's very refreshing to hear that you did have champions there too, especially among the faculty, because I know for a lot of people that's difficult to find.
Yeah.
When it comes to like even the student body with champions there, did you ever have any students who also made you feel supported in those ways?
So I had a kind of a unique experience coming into Agnes Scott. I had been in a car accident towards the end of my senior year in high school, and I broke my tibial plateau, which basically meant that I was pretty much out of high school for the last 3 months of my high school career. And it meant that I effectively had to learn how to walk with my right leg again. And so I think I kind of mentioned that Molly Merrick did an incredible job of making sure that I was comfortable and that life was just easier for me in some ways when I arrived at Scott. And, I don't think Molly thought about how she was making my life easier in the short term, but socially kind of ostracizing me because I lived on the first floor of Walters my first semester, and everybody on that floor was white on both sides. Which was just weird. Like, I mean, as a person who had gone to super diverse schools, it didn't bother me. But it didn't allow me to get to know the other Black students in the dorm. And so there was like this myth attached to me that remained attached until sophomore ring ceremony. I remember very distinctly someone said that they were told that I said I wasn't Black. Oh. But like, wait, what?
Right.
Like, I might be one of the most obviously Black people up in here. Yeah, so that weirdness. Sorry, somebody is calling me.
No worries, take your time.
They need to leave a message. Yeah, so that weirdness was happening in the first couple of years. And I think one of the things that really kind of bonded me and my dear friend, my godson's mother, was the fact that she was like, there is no way in hell that girl said that. Like, y'all, come on. Let's be real right now. And so, just in terms of Black folks writing, she was certainly one of them. And then I think I mentioned the story about my senior year not getting the journalism award, and the president of Wakazi at that time being like, yeah, it's not okay that the college did not give one award to one Black student. And she made sure that every senior got an award. And it's something I think they continued to do. She would have been a junior at that point, but I think they did it the next year. I don't know if they continued to do it after that. But yeah, there was this kind of sisterhood and community that was happening that I thought was really beautiful. Like, we all we got, and we gonna ride together. And even though, I wasn't super close with a lot of them, I see them today and we embrace, and it's just beautiful to know that we had that shared history and we have that shared memory. One of us is a grandmother now, which is just crazy to me. Like, how? Like, make that math ain't math. I don't get that. But yeah, when her daughter's baby was born, I sent a little something to the little one.
That is so sweet. Thank you for sharing that. That's like, I love like hearing about just like also like how you guys have literally evolved like over time. Like that's like exactly what we're looking for. And
actually, I think she talked to your class. Didn't you guys talk to Patrice?
We did.
Benton? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that it was Patrice who like quite literally. Oh my gosh! Like we're gonna be interviewing her as well. So like I want to ask her like, so tell me about you being a grandmother.
Go do that.
No, I won't.
Yeah, Patrice and I have a really special relationship. I haven't spoken to her in a really, really long time. so her brother dated a woman who was a producer for the Tom Joyner morning show. And so whenever Tom Joyner, I think there was one time our senior year that Tom Joyner came to town. And Patrice was like, you want to go? And I'm like, doesn't that mean we have to get up early in the morning? And she was like, yep. But you're the only person I can think of who is going to get up on time to go with me. And so, yeah, I went with her to a taping of the Tom Joyner morning show. And then I think when we were like first semester, sophomores or juniors, she was going down to FAM for homecoming, also to meet her brother. And my mom was living in Tallahassee at the time. My mom was doing a short-term assignment in Tallahassee. And I hadn't been to a FAMU homecoming since I was a child. I grew up in a family where all the Black folks went to one of two schools. You either went to FAMU or you went to BC. Well, back then it was BCC. Now it's BCU. And it's a running joke in the family that all the smart people went to FAMU. It's just like, y'all are the worst. But my grandmother was a very, very proud FAMU alumna. And so we went to homecoming every year when I was growing up. And when I was young, the Florida Classic, which is the game between FAMU and BCU, was played in Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. And so we always had box seats for the Classic. But, you know, Patrice offered to let me ride with her to Tallahassee, and she decided to get off the highway and take back roads. And we proceeded to have this whole conversation about how, you know, we're driving through these remote parts of Georgia where there's literally cotton growing. And, you know, we go down this rabbit hole about what if there are people working this land who don't know that we're free? And, you know, over the course of 2 hours, we unpacked what it would mean for somebody to still be working the land without knowing that we are free. So, yeah, good times with Patrice. When you see her again, tell her to say hey.
Okay, I will. We should be seeing her next weekend, so I'll be like, hey, your girl said hey. And then another question I do have, too, is just, like, you know, I know you're talking about how a lot of, like, the students were, like, they never really interacted with Black people like that. Can you tell me more about, like, how the political landscape kind of looked like at Agnes Scott and how the institution itself handled, like, the political landscape?
Yeah, so they did this thing. I don't remember what it was called. You know who you could probably ask, though? Ask Misty Dumas Leverett. Ask her what the thing was called. I keep saying the thing. Ask her what the program was called that Professor Sally McEwen was responsible for. So Sally McEwen was a professor of Latin, Greek, something. She was actually my very first advisor when I got to Agnes Scott, and she was trying to get me to major in like Latin or Greek or whatever it was that she taught. I think it was Latin, and I was like, "Where the hell am I going to major in a dead language? No, I'm not doing that." But there was this program where we would all get together and try to talk through difference, specifically racial differences. And they trotted it out. In the beginning, they trotted it out because of they thought it was something interesting to do, to get students to think critically about issues of race. The last time I remember doing it as a senior was because of... Did I tell you guys the story about the water balloons?
I don't believe you did, but if you did, I would love to hear it again.
Okay. So, my senior year, there was a first-year student who I will state up front, her family ended up suing the college. And it was settled. And here's why. So this first year student, Black woman, was coming out of, I believe, Walters on a Wednesday night, just before the sun started to set. It was during Black Cat Week. We all know how crazy Black Cat can get. We all know the pranks that come with Black Cat. One of the pranks for the sophomore class was to throw water balloons, and they did it almost exclusively to first years. So this young woman comes out of the dorm. She's on her way to midweek worship. She's on her way to church, and she came out of the building, and they're standing there with the water balloons, and she says, "I'm on my way to church. Please don't throw water balloons at me." "Oh, we're not going to throw water balloons. It's all good. It's all good." Well, of course, they do this, and she starts running, and they throw them, and the cobblestones get slick, and she falls and sustains an injury that is so serious that she has to have surgery to reconstruct some part of her leg. At the time, my friend was president of SGA, and I was in a position on student government known as the minority advisor. It was a newly created position. I was the second minority advisor that we ever had for student government, which effectively meant that I sat on the executive board and represented all of the affinity student organizations in the college. Okay. All right. So, memories. This happens, we're in school pre-social media. So it happens very quickly. The college was able to do a much better job back then of cleaning stuff up, and people didn't know about it. But people knew about it because apparently a couple of friends of this young woman were with her when literally went down. So they start talking, and they go to the president of Wakazi. And the president of Wakazi, we all used to hang out in each other's rooms. Like, I had my junior and senior year, I lived in the same room on the top floor of Edmond, the suites that overlook the Alumni Garden. One of those. Lived in that room for 2 years in a row. So, we all used to sit in that little, I don't know if there's still a little sitting area outside those suites, but we used to sit there. We would be in each other's rooms talking. And I just remember the president of Wakazi being like, looking at me and my friend and being like, "Y'all got a mess to clean up." And I'm sorry, what? Yeah, y'all got a poopy diaper to clean up. And we were like, "What?" And she tells the story. And my friend and I look at each other and we were like, we have hundreds of students. So we go in and request time with the dean of students. And of course, she is happy to have us come and have a sit down and talk about how we are going to handle this, because by the time we sit down with her, students are threatening to call the local TV stations. I don't know why it is, incumbent on the SGA president and the minority advisor to figure out y'all crisis plan. But okay, let's go in here and try. And so we sit down with the dean of students at the time, and this has come up in conversation, every other year since it happened, because it is reflective of, I guess, how I show up in the world and just don't care sometimes. But I do care at the same time. So we're in our office, and we're trying to explain to her how dire the situation is and trying to help her save herself and save this institution from itself. And she says to us that it's just important for us to communicate to the Black students that this was a prank gone awry, and it shouldn't be taken so seriously. And that's when I kind of lost it. So, I'm older now. I'm more measured. I've always been very, very calm, but I do a much better job now that I'm older of always speaking in the same tone of voice. When I was younger, people would get nervous because my voice would drop a register, and I would be very deliberate in my speech, and I would make sure that I enunciated every word. Kind of like what I'm doing right now. And what I said to the dean was, we are students at a woman's college. We insist that no means no. We expect men to understand that when we say no, we mean no. What I hear you saying is, no doesn't mean no if it involves two women, and that's not okay. And my friend was sitting next to me, and I remember her going like, because again, we have this, like, there's this whole, is it myth? Is it something that's, said to people to scare them into behaving in a certain way? But there's this ongoing belief that if you say the wrong thing, behave in the wrong way, you can be packed up in the middle of the night. And so she's looking at me like, we about to get put out of school. You are in your last several weeks of your career at Agnes Scott, and you get put out of school because you talking crazy to the dean of students. And she was like, and by association, I'm going to get packed up and put out with you. And I think in that moment, because of who the dean was, she didn't really realize the gravity of what I was saying until we left. Because she was a very jovial kind of person. I mean, as far as I know, she's still involved in the campus community to some degree. I mean, she is an alum. And so she was really jovial all the time. And so as we were leaving her office, she was like, well, thank you for coming in, Fran. That was her thing. Thank you for coming in, Fran. And we shook hands and we left. The next time I saw her, it was a completely different tone. It was like, it clicked in her brain like, oh, wait a minute, this little heifer done crossed the line now. Yeah, it was a very different tone. And I remember the day that I graduated, she was hooding everybody. The day that I graduated, she had this look of relief on her face, like, thank God this one gone, finally. Yeah, I mean, if I'm not going to do anything else, I'm going to ride for my folk. And it is not okay to say no means no until. That's never going to be okay. And as an administrator, I would expect you to know that.
Absolutely. No, that is definitely an interesting story, and it's kind of leading me to two other questions for you too. But like, okay. Also, like I we love to hear someone literally standing up to like the literal dean of the college and standing on.
She was the dean of students.
Dean of students. Yes. But standing up for what's right, and I really appreciate you for that. And it's also interesting that she had relief as well, because in my head it's like, you should want challenging students here to challenge where you might be shortcomings. So
that's what college is for, right?
Exactly.
To the extent that a student is embodying that, we should celebrate it. And yet, I feel like at the time it was more of a be obedient kind of approach. And I don't know if that was grounded in race in as much as it was grounded in the time.
Yeah. And then like my question for you too was just like how you guys were having like those like talks like time to time to think more critically about race. Even outside of those talks or after those talks, how often do you think like the students around you thought about race?
Which ones?
Particularly the white students, but I would also
They didn't have to. Mm-hmm. They didn't have to.
Right.
And they still don't have to. Is the truth. It's been 30 years since I moved into Walters. And I'm sure if a young Black woman moves into Walters in the fall of this year, 30 years after I moved into Walters, she's going to have an awareness of her race. As all Black people have an awareness of their race. As all women have an awareness of their gender. As all LGBTQ plus family members have an awareness of their sexuality. When you're the norm, or quote unquote norm, you don't have to. You just show up. Or not. Because sometimes they don't. And so, you know, I don't think white students thought about race. To the extent that they did, it was probably, you know, the ways that being around Black students made them uncomfortable if they came from places where were not a lot of Black people. I, you know, always had a tremendous amount of empathy for the aunties and uncles that worked for Physical Plant, because I felt like they probably got the worst of it in the 90s. Mm-hmm. They probably got the worst of it. You know, I told that story about Big people not being given a roommate for first year. That is what it looked like for the student. And I don't know if anyone has ever said whether Edna Lowe Swift had a roommate. I don't know that that has ever been a discussion. But I certainly thought about in my senior year, my junior year, my senior, really my sophomore year. Because as a sophomore, I lived in Inman on the second or third floor. I want to say it was the third floor. And had a roommate for only half the year, not even half the year. She was a transfer student, Black woman. She only stayed for like the first half of the first semester. Then she left. I had an awareness of the privilege of being a Black student at Agnes Scott and having a double as a single. Like, who gets that privilege? A double as a single in Inman, because back then Inman was the dorm that you wanted to be in, because it was the one that had, you know, the central heat and the central air that the others, except for Walters and Winship, didn't have. And then, you know, as a junior and senior, being in one of the suites, and it's a big deal. And how wonderful to have a room by myself in 1998, 1999, 1997, 1998, 1999. But, you know, go back 30 years, the reason that you had a single was totally different. But yeah, I think the awareness of race shifted a little bit, but, you know, if something doesn't affect you, you don't have to think about it.
Very true. Very true. And I know we're coming close to time, so I have only 2 more questions for you. And I appreciate you so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I've got such lengthy answers.
No,
I've been covering everything that you wanted to talk about.
No, this has been a great exchange. Like, and my whole goal here is to listen to you. So don't feel constrained whatsoever. Like, talk to your heart's content.
Okay, perfect.
And like, you know, you were talking about when you were graduating and things, how Agnes Scott, like, Dean of students felt a sense of relief almost that you were leaving. How do you feel like Agnes Scott, institutionally and culturally, or even academically, like, set you up for success beyond Agnes Scott as a Black woman being in this world?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was going to be who I was going to be, whether I went to Agnes Scott or some other school. I think I said Agnes Scott was not my first choice. And so I was going to be who I was going to be. Like, I was pretty much baked when I went to college. I said, in high school, I said I was going to be an English major. From the time I was like 12 or 13, I said I was going to be a journalist. So I was pretty baked. You know, one of the things that I loved so much, I look back fondly at my graduation, because, so we were the class that Kurt Vonnegut did the commencement address for, that everybody has seen in books and articles and stuff. And two members of the senior class met Mr. Vonnegut's car the morning of graduation. I was one of the two seniors meeting his car. And so he gets out of the car, and we go down the steps of Maine and meet him and shake his hand. And he's pretty old man at this point. And very nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you. We're going up the steps, and tell me your name. And, tell him our names, and what do you have planned after today? And the other woman who was graduating with me that day told him what her plans were, and he said, "How about you? What are you doing?" I said, "Well, Mr. Vonnegut, I'm actually headed to Northwestern University." He goes, "You're the journalist." And of course, for me, I'm like, well, okay, maybe. He goes, "We talked about you at dinner last night." So apparently, a couple of members of the faculty and President Bullock had gone to dinner with Mr. Vonnegut the night before, and there had been some discussion about, like, students who were going off to do things that the college was particularly excited about. And my name came up, which was kind of interesting when you consider I didn't get the damn journalism award just a couple of weeks earlier. So this is what I'm talking about. Like, you're going to celebrate me in this conversation with this highly regarded, highly celebrated author of Slaughterhouse-Five, but you couldn't give me the damn award? I'm still hot about that, obviously. Still hot about it. Yeah, and so it was just like an interesting thing with this like moment of celebration, and knowing that undercurrent. I felt like the folks who rode for me, President Bullock, Dr. Tolliver, Dr. Thompson, Misty, we had an assistant dean of students, Sharonda, who sadly passed away in childbirth the year after I graduated. Those 5 people, the aunties and uncles in physical plant, they made me seem so seen and so heard. The rest of it didn't matter. You know, were there moments of terror in that senior year putting together my directed study? Yes. I look back at it now, all these years later. You know, I've been out of Agascot, 25 years as of last year. How much of it was of my own making? We do that, right? We're human. But as I said in the larger discussion with the class last week, I will always show up for my sisters. I don't use the term sisters with any sort of racial connotation attached to it. The folks that I feel connected to and really want to continue to support, I will show up for them. I will not show up for the institution unless you're prepared to atone for the shit that you did and that you're probably still doing on some level. Yeah. Stuff y'all got to be honest about, that y'all got to reckon with, that you refuse to do. And so, you know, Alice Walker wrote this great work about called Color Purple. And Seeley says, until you do right by me. Until you do right by us, you're never going to be the institution you think you are. And, you know, when when your professor and I started having the conversation about the work that she is doing with public sociology, I kind of challenged her and I was like, really, how much are you going to be able to do? It's a private institution. What does public sociology mean in a private institution? And she was like, mic drop. I think I'm going to have to sit with that from now until I stop teaching this class forever. Okay, cool. But it's something that you have to wrestle with. They don't have, it's not the University of Georgia. You know, I sent over the suggested reading and it's over here somewhere. Here it is, right there. In my place. One of my favorite books. Got this book when I was a student at Agnes Scott, as a matter of fact. My then boyfriend bought it for me. It's not the University of Georgia. They don't have to do it. It's not a state institution. They're private. They can do whatever they want. And it is significant that Agnes Scott was so far behind. The University of Georgia was ahead of them. Georgia State was ahead of them. Emory was ahead of them. Where's that going? Like, what are you so afraid of? Who are you protecting? And what is it that you think that you are protecting them from?
Yeah. No, honestly though, like that, like I am also going to sit with that too, because that's like a very interesting thought process with it. Because when I heard about what the segregation looked like at Agnes Scott from a while back with one of my friends, it was honestly really disappointing, and I was like, wow.
And disturbing.
Exactly.
Disturbing. Like, this is the institutional fabric.
Yeah.
The fact that we had, like, you know, I said this to some Black alums when cancel culture was happening. I was like, they gonna finally take Wallace Austin name off that building. Finally. No, they didn't. And so what does it say? That the man who told a young gay Johnson McDougal, oh, you know, you don't have a roommate because we thought you would be more comfortable. That's the line we go with? That's the script we're going to read from. Okay, cool. And again, your faculty meeting minutes make no reference whatsoever to what was happening in the culture, in the country at that time. Whether it was redacted or scrubbed or just you spoke off the record, that's not okay. You are manipulating history. That is not okay. Why? Because you know that history is not going to remember this moment fondly. That's why. But that doesn't give you license to change it, to alter it, to make us question what was happening. Just tell us. And the fact that you don't think that future generations will be smart enough and mature enough and thoughtful enough to consider the weight of the moment tells us everything we need to know about the institution.
Very true. Very true. I see why Professor El-Amin was like, oh, I'm going to sit with this for a little bit after talking to you, because that was another little mic drop moment. And before we close out, is there anything else you would like to share or wish that I would have asked you?
That's a good journalism question to wrap things up. Hey! I can't think of anything. I know that Professor El-Amin reported last week. I hope that if you are able to watch them side by side, you'll see that some gaps were filled in this conversation. I'm certainly happy if you have other questions to have another conversation if you need it. It was just a gift for me to share this time with you. I was you. 26 years ago. And it's just a real privilege for me to pay it forward and to give this new generation of thoughtful and brilliant students the gift that I could not be given for a lot of different reasons. I think technology has done an incredible thing about making the world a lot smaller. And so, it's my privilege, truly.
Thank you so much. I enjoy talking to you so much.